Ladies and gentlemen, good evening to all. This is the headline of international news. President Vladimir Putin, as you can see in the image, has just received the very good news. The very, very good news. And where does this news come from? It comes from the front line. News that has been eagerly awaited for months, if not for nearly a year already. And in turn, he announces the very, very bad news to Ukraine. President Vladimir Putin, very happy. It's when he's happy that he announces the bad news. Ladies and gentlemen, let's dive into the depths. There you go. But I ask you to share the video conference. Share it as much as you can. That's what it's about. Yes? Share it. Give it lots of likes. International news is starting to become very interesting. So, it's the Russian Chief of General Staff, the Chief of the General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces, who is there in the image, who exchanged with Putin via video conference. His name is Valery Gerasimov. Valery Gerasimov officially announced to Vladimir Putin on April 26, 2025, the completion of the operation to liberate the Kursk region. Bravo. He officially announced the completion of the operation to liberate the Kursk region. That means it's over. It's definitive. Kursk is now liberated, according to the information we are receiving. So, what are we learning? The report that was presented to Vladimir Putin, and naturally, Putin reacted. In Vladimir Putin's reaction, Putin congratulated all the military personnel who contributed to the defeat of the Ukrainian neo-Nazi units. He congratulated all the military personnel. That's the first aspect. We are first witnessing the expression of joy. Then he said this: the adventure of the Kiev regime ended in total failure. In total failure. The adventure of the Kiev regime ended in total failure. This is one of the first statements after congratulating the army. But what must be said and not forgotten at all is that, obviously, the Ukrainian army suffered a very fatal failure. We are not going to say the Ukrainian army. It was NATO's Ukraine. It was NATO that was behind this. It was a well-programmed, well-planned offensive by NATO. They went into Russian territory. Now, Donald Trump has tried by all means to save the lives of these soldiers. But no, Zelensky has always refused to acknowledge their defeat. Now, what was the fate of those NATO and Ukrainian soldiers who entered the Kursk region and whose lives were in danger? For the moment, this is not being discussed. Putin continues. Putin hails the enormous losses inflicted on the Ukrainian forces, particularly on the assault units and special forces, considered the best trained and equipped by the West. Putin congratulates himself he praises the enormous losses on the side of the Ukraine NATO military, meaning Ukraine and NATO sent their best equipped, best trained soldiers to Kursk, the elite, the cream of the Ukrainian and NATO army, since it was a mission where essentially you leave. Nothing is certain that you can return. If you don't pay attention, that is to say, I don't want to say the word, you leave. It's a mission sui. Suicide, there you go. If I say the rest, the platform will censor us. Yeah, it was such a mission. So Europe had to organize itself and send its best trained and best equipped troops, because entering Russian territory is a great risk. Unfortunately, it ended in a very bitter failure. So what is happening So Vladimir Putin says, Vladimir Putin praises the enormous losses inflicted on Ukrainian forces, particularly on assault units and special forces, considered the best trained and equipped by the West. Putin beats his chest. Please share the video. Give it lots of likes. Putin beats his chest. Then he says this. He reads this massive defeat in the Kursk border area. Here is the bad news, he announces. After congratulating, after having rejoiced, he then announces the bad news. Please share the video conference. Share as much as possible. He reads, This massive defeat in the Kursk border area paves the way for new offensives on other strategic points of the front. What does that mean? Russia is going to launch new offensives on other strategic points of the front. Russia was busy liberating its territory. All the soldiers who were in Kursk are going to be transferred elsewhere. This means that new offensives are underway. And you see, the number of Russian soldiers who are already pouring into Ukrainian territory, the toll that these people take in just 24 hours is already frightening, especially when adding more who were stationed in the vast territory of the Kursk region. Maranatha, it's another level of the situation in Ukraine. So, here is the bad news he announces. What also needs to be said is that Vladimir Putin says that these new offensives will allow for increased pressure on Kiev. Obviously, by tomorrow or the day after, we will see the follow-up to this statement, because Putin doesn't speak like that. So, the Kremlin claims that Ukrainian losses would exceed 76,000 soldiers sent to eternal rest or wounded. There you go. Or a notable fact. There you go. So, that's in the Kursk region. 76,000 soldiers. So, Gerasimov will also thank the army and appreciated everything the Russian army had to do. So, for the moment, here is the information we have. We learned that the Kursk region has been definitively liberated. It remains to be seen, is this just a publicity stunt? Is it actually real? Yes, we do know that Russia can do it as quickly as possible, but we are waiting to see what happens next. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was the headline of international news. Thank you for sharing it as much as possible. I will be back shortly with more news. This was the voice of your one and only samurai.